Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Hilltop. I'm joined today by Mr. Carroll Howell, who was a legendary figure at Chaminade for a number of years and perhaps most distinguished for being the first lay principal of Chaminade. Thank you, Carroll, for joining me today and for sharing your stories with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. And just to start out, though, I know you said when we were walking in, you haven't been back on campus since 1987, huh?
Yeah, that's true. The 18 years that I was here were fantastic years, and such a great culture here at Chaminade at that time, and I'm sure it's even better now, and different in many ways, but still I know the essential things that made Chaminade so special during those years are still part of the tradition now. There's
Sure.
no question about it. So.
Well, welcome back. And so I know you've only been back literally 15 minutes or so on campus, but what has struck you right away as your first impressions of driving back?
The plant is changed drastically, of course, from when I was here. It was adequate when we were here, and when back in those days. I was here from 1969 till 1987, and of course the plant is quite different now, and I'm not sure what the population is now, student population is, but when I came here in 1969, there were 8 lay teachers and a few custodial folks and cooks, but the rest were brothers of Mary, priests of Mary, Marianist order, and that has drastically changed.
Certainly.
As far as I know Brother Eppie's still here.
Yep, Brother Eppie's here. We have another Marianist brother and a Marianist priest that splits his time between here and Vianney. So we have sort of 2.5 Marianists on campus right now in terms of that sort. So quite a change.
Quite a change, there's no question about it.
For sure. So just even driving into the drive today, what are some of those memories that maybe kind of came back to you as you as literally pulled off of Lindbergh for the first time in many years?
Where I parked and where I came into the main building, of course, is the same. The principal's office is different, it's changed. The bookstore was right across the
Oh, gotcha. That's where admissions
the
is
hallway.
now, right?
Is that where admissions is now?
Admissions is right, yeah, into the left, yes.
So, obviously those look familiar, but none of the rest of it does. So. But I'm sure kids are, in my opinion, kids are kids. They don't change regardless of where you are and what the organization is. Kids are kids, which is the best part of this work.
Sure.
So.
Well, let's get back a little bit to the very beginning. Let's talk just a little bit of background on yourself to make sure everyone's in the loop. Are you a St. Louisan originally, and where'd you grow up? And kind of tell us a little bit about quick overview of your upbringing and how you got here.
Okay, I grew up in St. Charles, and at that time, the most influential person in my life for many, many years, including at Chaminade, was Don Ohms.
Oh.
He lived just a couple blocks from me when I came here, and he's the reason that I came here, quite simply. I went to school in St. Charles. I went to St. Charles Borromeo Grade School, and then I went to Chaminade, although I did visit when I was in the 8th grade. I did visit Chaminade and St. Louis U High and CBC, and spent a day going around to those different schools to see them. But I ended up going to Duchesne. I had a lot of friends there, and I was involved in sports there, and a lot of my friends were continuing there. Some had come over here to Chaminade. But so I grew up in St. Charles, and Don Ohms taught me when I was 6 years old. He taught me how to swim at Blanchette Pool in St. Charles. And I didn't know then, but at that time he was a student here, I'm sure. And later when at Duchesne, I played some basketball, and Don and Brother John Hogg saw me play, because we played Chaminade back and forth. We had a terrific rivalry with Chaminade back in those years. So I went from Duchesne to Quincy College, spent 4 years there, played a little ball there. It helped pay for my school.
Basketball, right?
Basketball,
yeah, that was your
I also
sport.
ran cross country there, and when I was at Quincy. So I did a 5th year at UMSL and focused primarily on English courses. So my degree was in English, and when I finished that year, there happened to be an opening here at Chaminade for an English teacher and head basketball coach. The year that I taught at Duchesne, that was the first year out of school. I taught English there and coached basketball with my old high school basketball coach was still there, so I was able to assist him. And during that year, I saw Don on the court back and forth. He wasn't coaching at that time, but he did take a year before I got here. I think it was before, maybe between Fred Kovar and myself. Don actually coached that year, and so he knew that I was playing at or assisting at Duchesne, and so that's how the opening came about. So Brother John Hogg hired me that fall, and even though he hired me, my first principal was Brother Fred Weisbrook. So that's how I got here.
Oh, wonderful.
And Brother Fred was just a terrific guy.
So before we get too far into your Chaminade career, let's talk a little bit about Don Holmes a little bit more. So it seems like you had quite a relationship with him from very early on. What are some of the qualities that made him such a legendary and revered figure here on this campus that we still hear about today?
Don had the complete package as far as I was concerned. He was a tremendous coach, but he was a man. He epitomized, in so many ways, he was my mentor. He epitomized what Estovir is all about. At that time, I didn't quite understand it. I knew what it was supposed to be, but Don was the guy that captured all of that into one package. And he was my hero. He was my mentor. He helped me and showed me what it means to be dedicated to working with young people and what that's about. So to me, the entire Estovir thing, as I understand it now, is about being and helping these kids be the best man that they can possibly be. And that's what Don represented, and he was a good friend. He helped me one summer build a garage out in St. Charles, and both Don and I carried kids back and forth to school, because at that time there wasn't a bus. I don't know if there is now.
There's not now, no. Yeah.
But we brought kids back and forth in our cars, and so we shared that. And he also, of course, around sports and other activities here at school, he was a legend and still is, in my opinion.
For sure, yeah.
So
I've been here 11 years, and certainly didn't know him personally, but everything you just said sort of sums up everything that I've heard about him, and the legend of his work continues certainly to this day for even those of us who never even had a chance to meet him, and the students as well, I think, too. Yeah. They hear that message as well.
Yeah, he ran an unusual football program. He ran the single wing, which I think he learned at Washington U, and I don't think anybody else did that at that time. And it was a weapon, because it was difficult to prepare for if you were on the other team.
Right.
So it wasn't always popular with everybody. We didn't groom a bunch of would-be quarterbacks or soon-to-be quarterbacks, but it was a concept that depended upon each of the kids out there on the field doing a specific job, and that's what he was so good at. He was able to get the best out of every kid.
Great.
And it was a real treasure, a pleasure to work with him.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you arrived here on campus in 1969. You had mentioned off camera that the athletic prom was just literally opening that year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're the new basketball coach.
Yeah.
What is life like, or what are the expectations for Carroll Howell, a young man ready to embark on this new job?
It was challenging. My first year I taught sophomores, and it's the only time I have ever taught sophomores. In fact, my year at Duchesne, prior to that, I taught freshmen. But I taught sophomores that first year, and then I had the same kids again as juniors. And then the third year, I had them as seniors.
Oh, wow.
So they knew all my tricks.
You knew their tricks, though, too,
yeah,
I bet, right?
Yeah, it worked both ways. So that getting started was perfect for me. Again, there were only 8 of us lay teachers at that point, but you could see that things were going to change a bit. I mean, I really enjoyed the work in the classroom, working with kids. But after, I guess I was maybe 4 or 5 years into it, Brother Fred brought me in and talked to me, and he said, how are things going? And I said, they're really going well. It's a little frustrating sometimes on the basketball court because we're trying to build a program, and it took a while. And he said, have you ever thought about administration? And I said, not much, but should I? And he said, I think it would be a good idea for you to do that. I think you have a package that might make you a good administrator and maybe a good principal someday. So at that point, I enrolled in a graduate program in education administration. And at that time, it was Northeast Missouri State. It's now Truman.
Right. So
I worked on my master's so that after teaching 10 years, the opportunity, Brother Peter asked me if I would, he was principal at that time, Brother Peter Lair, and he asked me if I would consider being an associate principal. There was only one at that point in time. So.
And were you the first layperson in that role even too?
No, I succeeded Greg Densberger, who left at that point to become the principal at DeSmet.
Oh, gotcha.
He moved over there. So then I followed Greg as associate principal here. But and I did that for 5 years. That was awesome. One of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, because it was time working with a lot of kids as well as teachers. It was as far as I was concerned, it was the ideal package, working as an intermediary between the students and the administration, the other things that had to be done, and especially discipline. I love working with kids and discipline, and I seemed comfortable with it.
It's a tough job.
It is a tough job, but I felt good doing it, and it just seemed it was a pretty good fit for me to do.
See, your time frame certainly is right in time with what you were saying earlier about the change from being almost completely a Marianist faculty as the staff to certainly, it was still evolving when you left here in '87. But what do you think the impact of that time and that evolution of that? Do you think it impacted the school, or does school culture sort of stayed the same?
And that was, to me, that was the one thing that I was able to help do when I was at Chaminade, was that transition. There was a concern the Marianists were, their vocations were down. They weren't getting the folks in that they felt like they wanted to in order to sustain the spirit, the presence of the Marianists here. And so I was a transition person in that respect. I helped move the Marianist spirit into the lay teachers. I don't know if that's exactly the right way to phrase it, but I think that's a role that I played at that time. After Brother Peter left, I was there 5 years, Brother Robert Mingus was president at that point. He invited me to be the principal at that point. Brother Peter left, he had other things, and he had to move on to different things, and that's when the opportunity opened up for me to do that. But again, I felt good doing that. I believed in everything about the Chaminade spirit at that time. I really did. I bought into all of it. I was zealous about it, and I truly believed it was a great opportunity for kids to come here and learn.
And just to dig a little deeper into that, you mentioned sort of helping put that Marianist tradition, that Marianist spirit into the lay faculty. What is that, and how did you learn it? Now we have the 5 characteristics of Marianist education, which is a published thing and a thing that everyone around here knows, but I'm sure that didn't exist then. But so how do you describe that Marianist charism?
Well, it was family spirit, of course, was very big. The dedication to Mary was important, was huge, and cultivating some of those qualities, the qualities of great women. To be a complete man, you have to understand that, and you have to cultivate that as well within the everything that you do, the curriculum, the activities, the sports, all the extracurriculars they have to be imbued with that Marianist spirit if it's to be successful. It clearly is now. And I think at that point in time we were moving, because we had to have lay people who bought into that. You can't fake that kind of thing. You either get it and you're into it, or you're not. And so it was critical that there were lay people who could carry that on and transmit that and transition into a staff which is now primarily a lay staff. Mm-hmm. But if you believe that that's possible, that's what we dedicated ourselves to do.
Right. You mentioned, sorry to cut you off.
I had so many good friends that were in the Marianist order. Jim Prague was a Marianist at one time. He is godfather to one of my children, and had so many good friends. Brother John McCarthy was one of those at that time, and there were just so many good teachers. I learned in teaching here 10 years, I learned what quality teaching was about. I really did. I learned to be a teacher when I was here. And I hope that the students got something out of it. I believe that everything we did in those classes had to be about reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Everything had to be about that. And it was interesting during the 70s. There was an interest in all schools of trying to do things that were relevant. It was a big word, be relevant.
Sure.
So we had courses here, like I taught a film course, a film study course at that time. And I was fortunate that one of the kids here was one of the Grundhauser kids, had parents out at Lindenwood who were professors out there. Mm-hmm. So I had access to all their film library out there, and the classic films, the Buster Keaton films.
A great resource for you.
Yeah, it was a wonderful resource. But we had a certain number of elective courses that were available in the English program. Journalism was another one. So that was a good time too, in an attempt to give kids things that appeal to their interest. If you assume that learning what you're interested in is the best way to learn.
So on a slightly different topic, but 70s and 80s, what does the Chaminade student body look like? How many students, based on your recollection, and what were some of the popular things on campus? Clubs, activities, sports, has that changed much, maybe?
I suspect so. There are more people, and of course the program is much more diverse now than it was then. We didn't have the staff to sustain all of that. But I think we grew in proportion to the needs, to what it has become now. I mean, sports were a lot of fun, of course, and we had competitive speech and debate programs. We had good art teachers. There were artists who worked here, and so it was a good package, I thought, and always with a focus on college prep, as it should be. I mean, I was so fortunate to work at Chaminade during those times in a high quality educational learning environment. I mean, so that's difficult to come up with anywhere. That's a challenge, but it was certainly true, I think, in those days. It was, and the kids bought into it. They really did, and the parents did too. So that was a big part of it. Everything we did was somehow involved in preparation for college, not just the academic part, but in learning to be a critical thinker. And that was always most important, to teach our kids how to critically think and learn.
One of the things that's always distinguished Chaminade has been the dorm and the residential component of the campus, which still is certainly going strong today. So I always like to talk to folks, what did that look like during your years here? Well, you know, again, I don't know if you remember numbers, but, you know, just in terms of where were those students from, how were those students received on campus, how was that program of the school integrated at that time?
A lot of students. It was a big part, a key part of the program at that time. I want to say it was something like maybe 10 to 20% of the student body at that time. I guess our high school probably was somewhere 450 kids, maybe 500, something like that. But I remember when I did the scheduling as an associate principal, the academic scheduling, the numbers were pretty good. It was pretty well balanced, and of course we had the middle school at that time as well. It fluctuated a couple of years from 7th and 8th grade to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
That's what I was just going to ask. I know it has fluctuated over the years where it was when you were here.
It did change a bit during those years, but it was always solid and self-sustaining.
And were the residential students during that time mostly kind of from Midwestern areas, or did you have international students at that point yet?
We did. We had some international students, a number from Mexico that I remember. Some Asian students were here at that time. Not as many probably as now. I don't know what that population is now, but there were quite a few kids from different places in Asia at that time, Japanese, but especially students from Mexico. We had some outstanding students, student learners, but also some great athletes. For example, in our tennis program at that point in time. So the dorm was a key part of it, and it was especially critical to find the right people to sustain that.
So you just kind of taking a step back a little bit, you mentioned growing the basketball program. Basketball, a very popular sport, very successful sport here on campus these days in modern times. What did the basketball program look like, say, right before you came, from what you know about it or heard about it, and what were your sort of goals in growing that?
Well, Chaminade at that point in time was clearly a football school. There's no question about it. I mean, soccer had just begun to take off, but it was a basketball school, and I was
a football school, I think you're saying, right?
Football school,
yeah,
yes. Yeah. And growing the basketball program was challenging, and I loved it, but I couldn't really see myself being a basketball coach as a career. Too many factors beyond one's control, and you know, we wanted to build a good program, and we took steps to do that. But you know, when I started getting into administration, then my focus changed as well. So I couldn't. I love working with the kids, the cross country especially. I mean, the cross country kids learned how to make improvement. We started using metrics at that point, which of course are huge now. But so kids could see their improvement. We did distance running, we did interval work, so they could chart their own progress, and we put up a big thing for them to be able to see how they could grow in that regard. And it didn't make any difference. You had a kid that came out for cross country. That's a tough kid.
Sure.
And just a treat to work with those long distance runners. They're an unusual breed. But some of my favorite students of all time were cross country runners, and also Estovir winners as well. Sure. But the basketball program took off, you know, after me, and really did. I think Wayne McKim succeeded me in that work, and Wayne did a good job. He was here for a long time, but the basketball program obviously has just really taken off since that time to what it is right now.
You mentioned Wayne. What you were overlapped for a number of years with him here, right? Yeah. So another sort of Chaminade legendary name that at least I've heard a lot about. What was his impact on campus? What made him special and still sort of like down home, somebody we still hear about many years later?
Yeah, Wayne was really good with kids. He's a good basketball coach, but he was the kids really liked Wayne, and he got a lot of mileage out of his players, and was a good teacher as well, excellent teacher. I kind of lost track of him after I left, but he was a great guy to be around. I enjoyed Wayne a lot, and so it was fun.
Good. What you mentioned, obviously, when you came on campus, that the physical plant here, the campus buildings has evolved a lot. What was the evolution during the time you were here? We talked a little bit about that you came on with the start of the athletic triangle, or the opening, and that was the first time the pool, the gym, the whole, that was all brand new, right?
That complex was brand new at the time and state of the art at that time. It was great for the kids. We had the Commons, I think we called it at that point in time. That was fairly new.
Yep.
And that was really the first expansion when I was here that took place. But it's just it's hard to imagine now. I see that there's a building going up right outside.
Yeah, that's right outside our window here. That's our new dorm that's being
dorm?
built. We'll called Marinist Hall. So the dorm building will be eventually torn down in the next year or so after that's done. So yep, we're growing, and hopefully more things in the future. So we still had horse barns on campus when you were here, is that right?
Yes,
an outdoor pool,
and
I know
the
was
outdoor
still
pool,
a big feature of campus at that time.
And the summer camp.
Yep, Camp Chaminade was a big deal then. We've brought that back in a smaller way. It's just a 1-week residential overnight program, but the last 3 years we've brought that back, and hoping to continue to grow that. But that was a big part of did you have any involvement with that, or were you involved in the operations of that?
Not directly at all, no, that was during the summertime, but my career as a teacher began at a summer camp. I worked at Camp Don Bosco in Hillsborough for all my high school summers. I worked down there. Of course, I was, at that point in time, there was a basketball camp there at that point, and so it was a great opportunity to, that's where I did my first teaching. And with the campers that came in, I was the nature boy, and I had all the animals in the zoo, and then taught the kids how to make a fire and that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So the summer camp was fun for the kids.
What were your time as an administrator, associate principal, certainly a challenging position, and you got 800 whatever boys, as you were saying. What were some challenges you faced in that regard, or maybe even the school faced in terms of curriculum and growing and evolving in that way? Anything that stands out to you there?
Well, it was again, we were growing, but incrementally, and I think the entire package was outstanding, and at that point in time, I was just so proud to be a part of it. I'm not sure that I moved on after being here to working with middle school kids.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is you left here in '87, and what did the rest of your time look like? What have you been up to since 1987?
I worked with. After I left here, I was working on my dissertation at St. Louis University. I had to change my dissertation because that when I started out here, I was doing it on 5 Marianist high schools, and so when I left here, I worked on my dissertation, and then I worked in business for a couple of years. I was service manager for Browning Arms Company for 3 years. They had a plant down near Arnold. And then I had an opportunity to get back in education again, and I worked in the Rockwood School District.
Oh, okay.
And I was an assistant principal for 15 years down there in the middle school program. So that was especially rewarding. I didn't think I'd have patience with working with middle school age kids, but
because your time at Chaminade was pretty strictly with the high school.
With the high school, yeah. Although I worked with Mike Bander. We all worked together, and as he was the middle school coordinator at that time. So, it was a package deal. We all worked together.
Sure.
So it was fun.
What were some of the differences that you noticed? Maybe obviously the faith component here at Chaminade versus at Rockwood, but also the all boy environment versus co-ed environment there, and Any observations there? Any kind of things that struck you from your years in both worlds?
I thought the fact that it was an all-boys school that helped to create an esprit de corps among the guys and among the kids, and it fit the program. I mean, I thought it was, and as I said, I mean, kids are kids. I don't think they change much, whether in an all-boys school or whether it's a co-ed school or whatever. I think if you're working with kids and trying to help kids be the best that they can be, then kids are kids. You'll find them everywhere. So,
what's your kind of boiled down on that a little bit? What's your favorite part of teaching, or favorite part of working with young people in an administrative role from your many years and reflection?
I think kids need to have fences. They need to know what the boundaries are. And helping kids understand those boundaries is a big piece of the discipline work, and I really enjoyed that. I felt like it helped me working with those key people, like a Don Ohms, like a Wayne McKim, like a Jim Gerker, like Tom Fiala is a good friend of mine still. Kevin Brennan, another. Those were. I was so fortunate to work with outstanding teachers when I was here, and that's a tough package to come up with anywhere you are, to have those. But a lot of those guys were graduates, were alums from here,
right?
So they understood what we were trying to do, understood real well. They were models that we could all aspire to be and try to be. So it worked out so well together, and it was just great to be a part of that. I was so fortunate to be involved in such a high quality program that was helping kids, academically, socially, in terms of boundaries, whatever it happens to be, to help kids learn how to be the best that they can be.
Any funny memories, favorite stories, dramatic stories that you have from your time here at Chaminade that might strike a memory up for a listener to our podcast?
There were a lot of good times. A bunch of us staff members started training together, and we did a number of us did triathlons together.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, we do the swimming piece, and then we'd get on our bikes and the neighborhood, and then do the runs as well. So that was a lot of fun. At that time, some of us went on to do. Most of us did. Kevin Brennan has done the Ironman now.
Yeah, I did know that.
So
yeah,
Kevin went crazy with it, but most of us did the first triathlon at Lake St. Louis. That was fun, and a couple of us ran marathons.
Good for you.
Did that thing. So that was part of the what we did. We also had a faculty. We joined a YMCA basketball league.
Faculty basketball team, huh?
Some of the greatest stories revolve around those years. We played in the old gym out of St. Charles High School, where the 1957, I believe it was, state championship basketball team played out there at St. Charles. And so we had a lot of fun playing ball. And,
were you the star of the team, being the former basketball coach?
I definitely was not. But boy, we had some good times. Trying to remember the name of there was a guy that worked in the dorm here. He wasn't on the staff, the teaching staff.
Right.
But he worked in the dorm, and I was talking to some of the other guys the other day. We got into the playoffs out there in this baskapball league.
Look at you guys.
And this guy was a player. I mean, he was a stud. And so we asked him, how about suiting up with us tonight? We're in the playoffs. You can suit up with us and join us. Well, we were doing layups before the game, and the first time he went up, he dunked the ball. And all the guys on the other team came running over and said, "Where did you get this ringer?"
Yeah, ringer.
And he was one. He really was one. So
So I assume you won the championship, huh?
No, we got to the finals. I can't remember what happened there, but we had a good time. It was a lot of fun.
Well, good. Well, and I hear through word of mouth that you guys still have a good time. That there's a fishing trip that happens for a lot of you guys. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there was that started out in 1980, and there were originally 6 of us. We started fishing down at Lake Taneycomo, where we started in 1980. And that was 6 of us, and there have been a number of folks have joined, including Scott and Steve Murphy, who's still
Steve
teaching
Murphy's still here. Mr. Bell, Scott Bell. You just said Scott. Just want to make sure everybody understands who Scott we're talking about.
And there have been others, the staff, but we still do it. In fact, we're doing it next week. The trip starts next week on the 2nd.
44 years then, huh? Right.
This is 44 or 45, or whatever
right,
that is.
Right,
yeah,
sure.
Maybe our 45th trip, 44 years. So.
But just one a year, just one time a year, you guys go?
We go a year. Some of us go more often than that,
sure.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how our wives look at it.
Gotcha.
But no, it's a great time. It's great camaraderie that we have doing that, and it's the original guys are still there, plus the others. So that was all colleagues, and some former students are in that group as well. So
awesome.
Over the years, so it's been so much fun. We have something similar to that also started in 1980. 8 of us who were on staff here at that time, that included Kevin Brennan and Tom Fiala. We started a draw for the NCAA basketball tournament, and we're still doing it.
I've heard of that too.
Yeah, still doing it. I mean, the way we did it is unlike any other draw. You know, there are all kinds of brackets,
sure,
programs. What we did that was different was we put 8 names in a hat. The 8 guys that participate. By the way, it's the original 8 guys are still doing it. We put 8 names in a hat and draw them out of a hat, and those in the order of draw then we'll begin to select. The first guy to come out will select among the 64 teams the team that he thinks is going to win the whole thing. All right?
All right.
And you consecutively through that, the 8th guy picks 9 also, and then goes back up the list. Nobody else has done it that way. You get paid. We each put $20 in. That's what we started putting in, $20, and that's what we still put in. And you get paid according.
Inflation hasn't hit the draw. No inflation.
So you get paid according to if your teams win in advance, then you make a couple bucks doing that. So if you win the whole thing, you make $100 or something like that. But it's been so much fun, and we probably had more laughs and more tears over that over the years than so many other things. But it's been great fun, especially because those are guys that you worked with, you taught with.
Sure.
Students that maybe you had in class, or maybe you hauled back and forth from St. Charles back in those days. So that kind of thing is pretty rare. I mean, it really is rare, and I cherished those kinds of things from the 18 years when I was here. It was just a very special place. Well,
good. So what were you? When did you retire from Rockwood, and what have you been doing in retirement?
Quite a bit of fishing. I retired in 2007, so I've been fortunate to enjoy those years, and my wife and I still have our home in St. Charles. We have 7 children between us, and we're both second marriages. And so retirement has been very good to me. I have no regrets, and as I mentioned, so fortunate to be involved in high quality learning institutions. You know, my years at Rockwood were really good years as well. And wonderful. So if you're interested in teaching and learning, I don't think you could chart a better course than the one that I've been fortunate to have. So
well, good for you.
So my retirement years have been wonderful.
Good.
And still keep in touch with so many good friends from those years. So.
Good. Wonderful.
It's been all good.
Well, we kind of touched on this earlier, but I always like to wrap up these conversations by just asking the guest, what does Estovir mean to you? And again, maybe it's a little repetitive of what you talked about earlier, but I just want to finish up by, how would you pass on to someone who's never heard that phrase or hasn't been to Chaminade? What does Estovir mean to Carroll Howell?
Well, to me, as I think I mentioned earlier, it means to be the best man that you can be. And what we're trying to do is help kids develop that and to be well-rounded. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a Renaissance man. Mm-hmm. And to not necessarily dabble in many things, but to be involved in many different things. And maybe not be an expert in those things necessarily, but explore. And as far as learning is concerned, if a kid wants to be the best that he can be, then I can't imagine a better place for it than here. Of course, it's imbued with all the spiritual and the religious dimensions that Chaminade represents. I understand that, but it is helping kids be the best that they can possibly be. And I think my experience has been there isn't a better place to do that than this place is, than Chaminade is. So I think it's a great school, and I'm proud to have been a part of it.
Wonderful. Well, to wrap up, thank you for your service for many years to our school and for making it a great place for all those students who were here and the fellow faculty members that were here with you at the time. And thanks again for joining us today, and welcome back to campus. We hope we can show you around a little bit more and enjoy some, and we hope it's not another, not good at my math, another 30 some odd years until you're back on campus again.
I really appreciate the invitation to come back today and the conversation that we've had. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and it's so good to be back here again.
Well, good.
Thank you very much.
Trying to preserve some of these great memories and the voices from our history.
Thank you again.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you in the audience for joining us as well. Again, Carroll Howell with us here, the first lay principal of Chaminade.